So I played through the entirety of Fatal Frame 5, or Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater, and I've got thoughts about it. So here they are. I can't say that I'm a mega fan of Fatal Frame, but I definitely don't walk away from the titles that I have played hating them. I remember being particularly fond of 2 and really enjoying the story in that one, along with the gameplay. Fatal Frame 1 sort of lost me, mostly because of that blind shrine maiden bitch. I could not stand the sections with her! The combat was intriguing without feeling too gimmicky and remained interesting for the 2 titles I played. I was very excited when I heard Fatal Frame 5 was getting remastered with a PC port, since to my knowledge, it only ever had a stint on the Wii U. And I'll be completely honest, I owned a Wii U, I owned Fatal Frame 5 on the Wii U. I did not play that shit. I played it for 5 minutes once, I'll be completely honest. I played it for 5 minutes, and then never again. So, let's jump into it, and let me give you my thoughts on it now. Now, before we go on here, I do feel the need to kind of put it out there that I, once again, I'm not a mega fan of Fatal Frame. I have not played 3 and 4. I've played 1 and 2. So a lot of my reference for how much I like 5 is going to come from how much I liked 1 and 2. And I didn't really like 1 all that much. I enjoyed the gimmick, and I got tired of it about halfway through when that blind bitch showed up. And then I really enjoyed Fatal Frame 2, and I actually really like that one quite a lot. So just keep that in mind going into this. Don't expect, like, me to be referencing a bunch of stuff from the lore and whatnot, because I'm not super educated on Fatal Frame. This is just my thoughts on 5, the remaster, as I played it this year. Now, I played Fatal Frame 5 back in November on my stream last month sometime, and it took me roughly about 15 to 16 hours to beat the entire game, I feel. This is minusing all the extra content. And looking at it from a gameplay perspective, which is the first area I want to cover, overall, the gameplay is extremely comparable to the previous entries I played, like 1 and 2. You fight the ghost with a camera. The camera can have various power-ups that are added in like the form of filters, which I think is cool. Multiple types of film serves as ammunition, like Type 14, Type 90. And it's just really nice to see that they're really putting in the effort to make the camera sort of this weapon that you're using and keeping all of your ammo themed around that as well, which I think is fun. The only real complaint that I have, along with some others, is that the gameplay in this one in particular felt really arcadey to me, which in fairness, if I'm remembering my time with Fatal Frame 2 correctly, it started to feel that way in that game as well. So maybe this has been an ongoing trend like 3 and 4 and I just don't know it. But I don't really feel like the arcadiness of like the combat takes away from like the ambiance and the horror or any of the story elements going on here. So it's not really too much of a detraction. And the combat does feel really nice and fluid when you're not compartmentalized into these incredibly small passages where you almost have no means of dodging the ghost. The dodge mechanic is a useful implementation. Kind of reminds me of the dodge mechanic they put into Resident Evil 3 remake. I'm guessing that this was in the game beforehand, though. I'm not sure if they just added it in this installment or if it showed up in 3 and 4, since I never got around to those, but I don't remember 2 or 1 having a dodge mechanic, in fairness. In terms of level design, I only found myself really annoyed with the drops that took place in like the huge temples where I had to constantly navigate my way through the same hallway 20 times. Another issue that I found in the game, and mind you, this is a Steam port, is that some events simply wouldn't trigger for me. I'm guessing that's going to be something that they fix in one of the next updates, but at the time that I was playing it back in November, I would have events not trigger for me at one point, but then they would trigger for me when I came back to the same location despite not doing anything differently, despite not exploring any other areas and whatnot. Like other Fatal Frame games, there are places you'll come back to multiple times, but in this one, I think it's actually handled pretty well, aside from the temple you go to the boat at. That was probably my least favorite section. Both times I got forced to go there, it reminded me a lot of the older games where I felt like I was getting lost constantly, and I really didn't enjoy that. Something else I really didn't enjoy was the 13th drop, where Ren had to defend the girls in the antique shop from an onslaught of ghosts. It felt like a FNAF mod with a survival mode that would come as a bonus after I finished the main game and that I would never ever touch. It felt super tedious, super arduous, and just stretched out the game time for seemingly no other reason. I honestly believe you could go from 12 to 14 without feeling like you really missed anything. Chapter 13 adds absolutely nothing to the story. I guess you could argue that it gives the sense of how imposing the curse sort of is and how powerful the ghosts are becoming. But that doesn't do anything for me, you understand? Because I was already intimidated by the ghosts. I already knew they were getting powerful because they tried to attack us in this place before. When you put me in this sort of almost Left 4 Dead survival mode, where I have to fight the ghost in incredibly small spaces, which is my least favorite part of the game, is when you pin me into these hallways, you pin me into these small rooms where it feels like I can't actually dodge anything that the ghosts are doing to me. It just makes me madder more than anything. Another survival horror element that kind of shows up in this game is the amount of notes that you have to read. And you see this in Resident Evil, you see this in Silent Hill. It's nice of the developers to do because they're trying not to bog you down with too much cutscenes and too much dialogue and that kind of thing. But the issue that I find is that instead of being bogged down with these cinematics that you could be showing me, and there are great cutscenes in this game, really entertaining, really suspenseful, sort of puts you on edge, a lot of the cutscenes do. But that sort of gets bogged down in all the reading that I have to do to learn about what this researcher was doing or how this ritual was done or whatever the fuck. This guy had a grilled cheese this day before he saw a ghost or some shit. Like, there's so much reading that eventually towards the end of the game, I couldn't care less anymore, and I was skipping a lot of it. Mostly because I was in Lynne's section, and it felt like okay, you know what? Why don't we just get onto the characters? Let's talk about the characters in this game. So in Fatal Frame 5, you actually play as 3 different characters throughout the game. The first one being Yuzi Kozukata. She has the ability of shadow reading, which gives her this ability to see someone's memories by touching them or touching material items that are related to the person. I would have to say Yuri's probably my favorite character in the game. I feel like they sort of made her the protagonist because you spend more time with Yuri than I feel you do the other two, for sure. She's very endearing. I enjoy her heart. I love how much she cares about Hisoka, and I think that's a really cool relationship in the game, which Hisoka's kind of like her mentor almost. And I would say that every character unfortunately suffers from being made stupid for some reason, which we'll get into in the story section. We'll talk about a couple of the beats that really I don't like. However, going on to the next character, you have Miu Hinasaki, who is the daughter of Miu Hinasaki, who, as far as I know, is the protagonist from Fatal Frame 1, and Miu is trying to find... Oh, sorry, Miu, I gotta specify this. Miu, the daughter, is trying to find her mother, Miu, right? That's not confusing at all. Miu has a lot of the same characteristics as Yuri. She gets way less playtime than any of the other two protagonists, and it makes me really sad because I would have liked to have seen more of her character. But for the parts that she's in it, they're really like I said before, endearing. Especially, we'll get into spoiler territory later, but some of the endings that I got, Miu gets some really enjoyable scenes where it made me feel really sorry for her and then made me feel really happy for her with the ending that I ended up getting for her. And then there's Lynne Hojo. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I absolutely hate this dude. I hate his character. I hate his sequences. The man just bores me to tears when I would play him, when he's in a scene. I just wish he wasn't such a nothing character. Like, it feels to me that there's nothing going on here. There's nothing interesting happening with him. I'm supposed to be invested in him. I can tell I'm supposed to be because I spend more time with him than Miu. And he's just not that interesting. He kind of feels like a rehash of older characters with the whole, oh, we're learning the mysteries of these curses or these rituals or these locations, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe it's this dream that I keep having that's motivating me to do these things, or motivating me to investigate this kind of stuff. And I just can't care less about him. And by the time we got to the end of his story, I thought to myself, okay, I really don't give a shit. And I feel like they kind of, if I'm remembering how it played out, I think they knew that we didn't care about him that much because they got his ending out of the way first, so that we could be invested in Miu and Yuri's endings and not have to worry about getting to him at the end and then being bored to tears for the final rest of the game. So yeah, that's kind of where I find myself with Ren, unfortunately, because I did enjoy most of the other characters. I enjoyed his little assistant. Miu was pleasant. Hisoka was particularly wholesome and just such a nice woman, and I'm really happy with how things turned out with her. So yeah, I don't know. Ren just kind of falls apart for me. It makes me sad because I want to love him, but I just feel like I can't because of the way that he's carried in the game. I keep trying to record this part, but the problem is I keep trying to add in a compliment for Ren, and then I stop myself and I say to myself, that's not how I really feel. I just don't want to shit all over this character. But that's essentially what I want to do because that's how I feel about this character. So I'm sorry for all the Ren stands out there. I just don't think he's that interesting. I think he's boring. And I think overall he's just not that great of a character. Okay? That's all I have to say. So thanks for listening to that. Now, I want to go ahead and get out of the way because I just wanted to cover the protagonists because they're who you're going to spend the most time with. Everyone else is kind of just there for you to try to save them most of the time. So now I'm going to kind of delve into a little bit of the story. So if you want to avoid any spoilers, just skip to the end to my conclusion and we'll, go from there. So to start out with, Yuri and Hisoka are probably my favorite parts of this game. Yuri and Hisoka run a sort of side hustle where they search for missing people by using their shadow reading ability. Eventually, Hisoka disappears into the mountain where she was trying to find this missing girl, but we find out what happens to them later on. And I don't know who's singing right now. I imagine it's her. I'm all wet now. For you, we're not dressed for this wet. Is that a fucking knife? Hey. No. I came all this way to stop you. Don't. Oh, I'm hallucinating. Okay, it's the exhaustion, It's fine. Everything's fine. We're having a great time. Oh no, I'm not hallucinating. Oh God. Oh Jesus. Oh no. Yuri, I need you desperately. This eventually leads to Yuri finding Miu, who went to the cursed mountain to try to find her mother, who also went missing up there. Oh, and Ren's probably doing something. He saved Rui, his assistant, like every other chapter that he's in. To get to the negatives of the story, it makes the characters make dumb decisions for no reason other than plot furthering. Like leaving the delusional girl who went through a traumatic event in a bedroom unmonitored, not secured, and just left to roam back to the mountain. They don't tie her down. They don't even lock the room. They don't even watch over the room. They just leave this girl who just got straight up traumatized. Almost looked like borderline kidnapping. Don't do anything for her. Don't alert the authorities. Absolutely nothing being done there. But I understand why it has to happen, because they always have to find some way to take us back to the mountain, because that's where the majority of the story is. That's where most of the gameplay takes place. So let me be clear. I'm fine with contrived reasons for stories to continue. I'm even fine with characters making the stupidest decision. I'm even fine with characters making the stupidest decisions possible to keep the story flowing. What I am not fine with is an entire chapter that is simply filler in between chapter 12 and 14. That's right. I'm ranting about Chapter 13 again because in terms of the story, it did absolutely nothing except exhaust me and stop me from playing the game for another day because I could not get over what a nothing chapter it was. And in terms of gameplay, it did absolutely nothing but frustrate me with how narrow these corridors and these rooms are that I can't even dodge the ghosts half of the time. The chapter was entertaining for the first 5 minutes and nothing more. Okay, enough about Chapter 13. Let's talk about the endings I got in this game because holy shit, what an emotional roller coaster. Yuri's ending was probably my favorite because it just has so much going on with empathy and sort of trying to understand where someone's coming from. You see Osei Kurosawa, the villain of this story, have Yuri use her shadow reading ability on her and is able to see all of the pain and suffering that Osei's been through. And this makes both of them tear up, and it eventually convinces Osei that maybe she can do some good for the world by fulfilling her purpose that this sort of curse has put on her. And so she goes back to protect the world that we live in. Meanwhile, Yuri gets to reunite with Hisoka, and I teared up at what a beautiful ending it was. It was so heart-touching, and definitely not what I was expecting from the end of a harrowing game like Fatal Frame 5. But it felt so good to see. And then you get to Miu, who has an equally beautiful ending where her and her mother gaze upon the sun once again, and Miu promises to never leave Miu ever again. And you just gotta feel happy for her because she's been struggling this whole time, feeling like her mother's abandoned her, feeling like she's always gonna be abandoned, kind of. She has huge abandonment issues, which we find out through some of her dialogue. And it just feels so good to see her get this reassurance from the one person that she really wanted it from. And then Ren's ending, honestly, it was pretty wholesome to see the girl kind of be like, I just wanted to be able to see you one last time kind of thing. But the problem is, once again, I'm just not invested in fucking Ren enough to give a shit about his ending. So, I wish him the best, and I'm glad that the girl got some closure there. But keep in mind, these are just the endings that I got. I'm sure there's a myriad of different endings in this game, but I feel like it's important to the integrity of this video that I purely give my experience with the game. I don't pride myself on 100% in games and getting every ending and doing that kind of thing. I just want to give you my uncut, clear, concise idea and thoughts on what this game was like for me personally. So at the end of this, what do I overall think of this remaster? I think it's pretty great. I dislike some of the game design choices, like some of the maps, and I dislike being trapped in those small corridors and having to deal with the ghosts without being able to dodge them. I feel like some of the characters are misused, despite the fact that they are great characters. The gameplay feels good. The horror elements are there. I did find myself getting scared throughout it, so that's kind of a really big plus because I don't get spooked by a lot of horror. So Fatal Frame 5 being able to spook me was a pretty good feat for it. The story's engaging enough that you can look past the stupid bullshit that they put in there, like the classic horror movie bullshit, And once again, I really fell in love with Yuri and Miu over the course of the game and just really got super invested in them and wanted to see how things turned out for them. This remaster is coming out in a sort of wave of remasters we've been seeing recently. Fatal Frame 5 felt particularly refreshing and hopefully represents a trend that Koei Tecmo plans to bring some of the other Fatal Frame titles to PC, so the people like me who maybe didn't play 3 because of some of the things that I was told about it, or the daunting task of what emulating Fatal Frame 4 is. I would even settle for them starting with remasters of 1 and 2. I hope that this remaster did well enough that Koei Tecmo will try to revitalize the series. I feel like Fatal Frame has an even better chance of doing well with modern audiences than it did back when it came out. So, just for an example and maybe a thought that I could throw out to Koei Tecmo, can you imagine what a VR-based Fatal Frame game could be like? I'm just going to throw that out there. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what your thoughts on Fatal Frame 5 are down below. Let me know perhaps a game you would like to see me review sometime. And feel free to come over to twitch.tv/TyMcAllister or something. I stream over there pretty much every other day. I stream me playing games like this. I play a lot of online games, so on and so forth. And I would love for you to come over to my Twitch chat and give me your input on what you thought of this video. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.